Hi, this is Sarah from sarayip.com, Facebook, The Numbers Queen, and Instagram, sarayip1111, with another round of meditation tips, this time with Sarah Maxwell. Now, Sarah is a retired professional athlete turned super coach, which just sounds amazing. I have known Sarah for quite some time since we sat next to each other in, I think, the Queensland Museum. And I think somehow your daughter actually connected us, as young and clever as she was. And yeah, I definitely have noticed we seem to have a lot of syncs between our thinking. And often you text, I'm like, "Go, you read my mind. Who's the psychic?" So yeah, very excited to do this brief interview on your meditation practice. Thank you so much.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Let's do this.
So, when did you start meditating, if you can remember?
Yeah. Okay, good. So I was thinking it's around 2003. I don't know exactly, but I definitely started out of desperation.
Oh, interesting.
I know, the whole retired professional athlete bit
Hmm.
was I was desperate to be better at what I did. And
Uh,
it was an amazing drive because it really helped me with something that had been bothering me at least since I was 14 years old.
uh,
It was so clear to me that my mind was analytical and going
mhm.
24/7. And so the desperation really came to a crescendo in sport because as I became better and I went from amateur to professional, I could just
Yeah.
feel that, man, like my mind was going crazy. I always think of the example of walking a dog.
Mhm.
In this case, the dog was walking me for sure.
Yeah, totally. I can sort of picture it actually. At some point, the dog and the owner maybe even got a little bit disconnected.
Oh
So
my
we're on the
gosh.
beach. Is this dog and an owner, which once belonged to each other? So put
And
a
it
little
was,
post,
it
put
was,
a
it
little
was sad.
poster up. Has anyone seen this dog?
And you know what? That image is a really good one because the thing that was getting lost was my spirit because I was over analyzing everything. I just lived in that anxious fear around results.
Yeah,
So understanding my head, ironically, my background's neuroscience. So
I
I've
know.
clearly been interested in that area forever. So I've
Wow.
wanted to get it. But the distinction for me, anyways, in terms of my study versus a practice was everything I'd studied was just garbage, really.
Oh,
Because in this space, yeah, that's pretty harsh, hey?
well, you
Sorry
know
to my
what?
professors.
If that's what's true for you, it's really great that you're able to express that. I think that's really refreshing.
Well, I suppose why I mean garbage is because we never focused on any of this actual practice, which
Oh, wow.
I suppose I was looking for peace and we were, taking ovaries out of rats instead. So I was like, well, how does that apply? So perhaps my life path was going to be about application. So,
Mm.
I sometimes say I'm a recovering psychologist only. And I love saying funny things to you because you always get me with your funnier, clever stuff.
Oh,
But
that's sweet.
but the recovering aspect is that it's like what actually works in real time. And for me, real time was what is actually going to work for me on the beach volleyball court. So that at the time was the drive.
Yeah. So what you're saying to me is, so it's after you have retired that you got more into meditation.
No, like I was deep in my career. So the desperation, so I should have explained that. So my career was like basically 2000 to 2008,
Yes.
just to give it ease of explanation. And so there's that beginning of being professional
Yeah. Okay.
and really seeing the truth of my mind
Mm-hmm.
and really having an amazing coach who I say was, my Zen philosopher guru who used sand as his medium. But that's it. I was being exposed to these ideas. And we even took a meditation coach on tour.
Oh, that's amazing. That makes me
Mm.
happy. When I hear things like that, I think that I'm just glad it comes out into the open. In my experience, a lot of people are using psychics and meditation and hypnosis and all the time, but they don't admit to it. And so you get a lot of people who still rubbish it. And that's sad. because that, of course, then trickles down to the teenagers and children who aren't allowed to explore these possibly life-saving techniques much earlier in their lives. I personally learned meditation at 14 in drama class, and I can still remember the first time I lay down and breathed consciously. I mentioned this in my first interview recently. And I just wish more people could have that experience, because I know for me it got me through high school. I would have probably dropped out or burned out. I used to have to count myself back down into hypnosis just to go to the exams.
Oh, I wish I'd had that, honestly, because I see the dramatic shift in my life path, and I sometimes remember it back like an old memory, and by the way, it's not perfection, and we'll get into that, but it's more like seeing it for what it is, like having my mind be more of an ally, whereas before it was definitely felt like a foe.
Yeah, antagonist. That's really interesting. So you were doing it deep in your career, okay? And so you've kind of answered the second question, which is making me laugh, because you're doing that thing where you predict the future again, which was what inspired you to meditate and who inspired you. So I even told, there you go. I know, it's just so perfect. So I guess that's been answered. So you had obviously some coaches. I'm guessing you did some courses, maybe read some books to get yourself into it.
Yeah, I would. It's funny because my coach inspired me to a deeper way of thinking about life, but the practice was Vipassana. 10-day, I just quickly say to people, 10 days, no talking. And I say it that way because my partner laughed and was like, you could never do that. And of course, tell me I can never. And I'm like,
psychology is brilliant.
Boom, and I'm like, oh, watch me. And the funniest part about it was the person who recommended to me, a fellow volleyball player, younger, which was really cool. She was great because she never told me too much. And that was a really nice gift, actually. And she stuck to that because it was very life-changing for her. And I've struggled to basically pay that favor back, because I just get so excited to describe the experience because it was so full on. But one of the things I went in there with was desperation, because I had a deep fear of being alone. And it was just like kind of like oozing out of me in all these terrible ways. Imagine through high school having that, but in my volleyball career it was coming up. And I want to use a real example because I don't like to talk about big ideas around this. It was literally like, I'm in another country and I'm playing volleyball and I am worried about who's going to dinner tonight. I've got to make sure I've got something set up so I'm not alone. And we won't even go into how it impacts your relationships, when you have a fear of being alone. This is like just this little example with friends, constantly trying to manipulate. This is what fear does. It's like it kind of like seeps out of you at the worst time. So here I could be focusing on playing volleyball in a really cool country, but no, I'm worrying about who's going to be at dinner and making sure I'm not alone in my hotel room.
Well, I mean, you've tapped into a few things. If I could sort of backtrack a tiny bit. Firstly, when you actually said the thing about taking ovaries out of rats, that is actually what they used to do for women who presented with anxiety. Is they would do things to their womb. That's where hysteria came from. So unfortunately, there is this idea in a way that anxiety or the need to meditate is this kind of way of taming our wild side, our intuitive side, maybe our feminine side, so that it can behave, so that it can sit in a chair, so that it can follow orders. And that's, I think, where we get a bit messed up with meditation practices, using it like, to domesticate ourselves. Whereas, I quickly realized that that wasn't why I wanted to meditate. I wanted to meditate to actually free myself. So therefore I had to cycle through different teachers and things. And, that's why I'm having all these different types of people to talk to. So, thanks for being so open. Are there particular situations that you've really used meditation to help yourself to navigate? Particular circumstances, events where it made a lot of difference?
See, this is where you're the psychic, because I was like, oh, I want to share this. And then that's what I need to share under. Thank you. This is fun. This is like, we don't even have to ask the question. So the area I want to like tell this story and then maybe go back a little bit in terms of describe the process. But I remember my wedding day in 2008. And I remember this so clearly because of the practice that I'd been doing for years. I was so freaking present. Everyone uses the word present now, but people weren't using it that much back then. And the way that actually looked to me was I remember all of it. I remember looking at everyone that was there. I remember my father-in-law with the ring, you know, I remember putting the necklaces on us, like the whole thing was, yeah, I'm actually fully here. I'm in New Zealand. I'm in this amazing backyard overlooking this lake, you know, like I remember it. Whereas other things in my life, because I could really contrast it to the blur of other things where I was so anxious and worried. And in my head, I actually wasn't there.
Right.
And because of not only the practice, but that morning, both Nat and myself went on an hour walk with our own practice. We didn't go together, you know, and it was important because we were not only like meditating in the nothing space, but we were also doing that clearing to create the day deliberately. For me, that's been one of my favorite things about the practice in the clearing has been being able to get that blank canvas experience where I could actually paint on it and say, I'm creating this. I'm literally like painting my future. So I remember the wedding day as a really present moment. And then, you know, it's funny. I'll just share that one for now because not to overindulge in it, but ultimately when you have a child, it's like all those moments. And by the way, to me, one of the ways that I know about being present is really seeing when I'm not. So that's kind of a trick of mine. Like I don't adopt like, I'm so present all the time. It's actually a lot of times going, oh my gosh, like I see how I just missed that.
Yeah.
I didn't see, like sometimes I drive down my street and I notice something that I've never seen before. And I'm like, wow, you know, I drive on this street all the time. And then I open my windows. So because I've meditated over the years, and I'm not meditating as much these days, but I've done it in the past, I almost have these little strategies like, okay, I don't actually listen to the radio, but I then go, I put the windows down. It's like I need more sensory feedback to kind of wake me out of my head.
All right. So what you've said to me is that it really helped you to get married. And I mean, that's just so beautiful. And I mean, before we were doing this call, I did have this really intense flashback to my own wedding. And there's a few other things which suggest to me that we were destined to do this today. It's my 4 personal days. I was like, oh, woo, numerology works. So we also know actually, and I'll just add this in as a little side note. So in numerology, you're a 31/4 life path, which is this coming here to heal from a broken heart, you know, often from, you know, the age of 4, even earlier, and then really being able to start turning that around from about 31. We know that your partner Nat is a 33 master number, and you know that you actually got married at your life past turning point ages, which is so neat. And I've written about that before, but I guess it adds that extra dimension to your wedding day because, I mean, for example, if you had been married before in another life, which I think is quite conceivable, perhaps that's one of the reasons it was such an achievement for you in this lifetime to be able to claim all of it. A few times when you talked, you know, when you talked about being alone and wanting to make sure there was someone to have dinner with, I get those flashbacks of you from another era or another time, another space where that it was critical to you being accepted is that you had looked after all those small details for other people. So it just feels like this lifetime, you know, you've done so much clearing on yourself, and it's exciting to be able to talk to you about it just through this kind of simple questions about meditation.
You know, meditation is it's funny, this like transition where I feel that everyone is interested in it now, whereas I'm like,
the rates have gone so high. So COVID I mean, like, I did a whole webinar on like the effect of COVID on people's spirituality. It's through the roof. I think it was like 30-40% increase. And I noticed it because as soon as I would start doing my numerology charts and I basically accessed the spiritual internet to get to the contracts, there were all these people in my way. So I used to have to do the charts at weird times during, you know, the COVID thing, and I'd have to do them over a few days instead of just really quickly because it was like there's these queues to get to God at that point. And
Really?
yeah, a lot more people want to know what's going on. And I mean, I noticed it because I've kind of been doing that off-peak travel for so long, and all of a sudden there's traffic jams to try to get to those spiritual wisdom zones. And I was like, what the? I need to like move on.
Yeah, it's funny. My relationship to it being a little bit more mainstream is I like to be different. So it's kind of bugs me. I'm like, why is everybody doing this? Okay, this is now it's not cool. I got to go find something else that's weird. But you're weird too. You're probably a bit like that. But I notice that there's some like residual impact from having meditated. And I remember thinking at the beginning, because I always associated it with like a guru or like a monk type situation, that if I take this on, then I'm always going to have to meditate.
Interesting, yeah.
And so I hope, like, the voice I want to bring is, I don't meditate that much these days. Mm-hmm. And yet there's a lot. And by the way, this doesn't mean, you know, I don't know the difference. Like I think there is another level if I was. However, there's a lot of like residual goodness that comes up from even just having had a solid practice for a certain amount of time, because I feel that like a sense of flow. Like I think that book Flow talks about that. There's like a baseline and you reach it, and it's not like cruising altitude, but a little bit. There's like this thing that I sort of don't seem to cross over the chasm that I used to, of despair and loneliness. Oh. Yeah, but it's a bit like that, you know, where I literally could work myself up. And when I was at Vipassana, I experienced that. I worked myself into this migraine where I thought that I'm for sure going to need an ambulance to like bring me out of here. And I do think that being in your best state, you know, in that state of awareness, you start to like, it leads you to the next step and the next step.
Yeah.
You know,
absolutely.
Like, nice.
I'm really glad you talked about that, because as soon as we started the call, I got this intense stabbing pain in my head. I never ever get that. I don't really get that kind of thing. And I was like, So when you said that, it just went poof by. I'm really pleased that has been.
Oh, sorry. Yeah, get rid of it. Sucks.
My life, and it's part of the fun, really. It's part of the fun. It goes as soon as it's expressed, and that's actually helps me to keep my throat open. So I totally agree. And actually, one of the reasons I'm going to start teaching meditation is I see it as like a pathway to the temples. And I say temples because there's lots of these zones of learning. One of them is, of course, things like numerology. But once you build the pathway, it's okay just to use it, and even to invite other people along on it and encourage them to build their own. But hey, use yours for now if that's going to be easier for them, or they can't build their own. Not everyone has the time, energy, or money to be able to devote to meditation. Some people at the first level of Maslow's hierarchy. And we can direct our energy or frequency to them, and that's beautiful, right? To give and receive. But yeah, I mean, I like to think of meditation as honestly just like an entry point. And in the first interview I did on this recently, Vicky and I talked about the fear that people have when you reach a certain point in meditation and you can actually talk directly to kind of higher powers or dimensions. That's usually when people freak out. But actually, it's delightful. It's really enjoyable, and it's really about having a community or people around you who want to keep exploring and who aren't going to then shut you down suddenly now that you've suddenly got your abilities back. So it's about also knowing when to change teachers and change tacks to basically make your yoga or meditation teacher unemployed again. When I worked in charity, one of the biggest challenges was to raise enough money and do enough good that you could close the charity. And we found that if the charity didn't have that as an end goal, they would blow because they never saw the problem ending. So they had that mindset to everything. Does that make sense?
Yeah, kind of. Say a little bit more though on that.
So
What do you mean blow?
It's the same with meditation, that it's ideal if a student outgrows a practice at some point. That's fantastic. That's like going through spiritual puberty. That's what you're aiming for. Even better if they challenge you and go, actually, I've invented my own style and I'm going renegade. I mean, for me, that's something to celebrate. But I think this is where you see the difference in teachers at times, the ones who want to keep you under them and the ones who go, this is fantastic, go and proliferate.
Yeah, I get it.
I don't lose anything from you winning. And that's that. I feel like that's the difference between the age of Pisces and the age of Aquarius, and the difference between the one path to heaven and the 11-11 way, which is there's many pathways to happiness.
And I think we all sit in maybe ideal zones. You know, when we help people, there's zones where I'm definitely clear that I don't help people very well. You know, it's not my strength, or at the moment, it just doesn't feel comfortable. So there's an area where I'm always drawn to in people's lives. So in a way, that's temporary, isn't it? It's not going to be like the way they're not always going to resonate. We're not all going to resonate each other at that time. So it's just like kind of being able to feel through what is that zone. Exactly. And also, not feel
intuition, the inner teacher. The lesson here is done, or you've done enough here, move on to something else, come back to this later. A teacher who is flexible in the exterior world, you know, creates students who are inflexible in their interior, and they go, okay, that's enough for today. And there's this beautiful rhythm to what they do. And for me, that's the point of meditation, is to reestablish the internal rhythm, the internal listening, the internal teacher, so that whether or not there's someone there stimulating you, you're able to just create pleasure on your own and sort of create, as you talked about, history on your own to change reality without always needing someone to give you permission.
I just love that you had a joke with yourself, but that's what I love about Sarah. You don't have to say it. I know you just had a fun moment. You were like, am I going to be dirty on this podcast today? No, I'm not gonna.
Well, you know, in numerology, sexuality and spirituality have the same vibration, 37-10-1. When I realized that, it made so much sense to me, because that is where, like, a lot of my clients and, you know, even myself, we've been so shut down or filtered, and I understood that there's these sort of different ways you can reclaim it, and it's all delightful, and it's fun to, like, be provocative. I think it's a sign of a kind of a healthy being. Fertility and that enjoyment of connection and intimacy.
Right on. Who knew that we were going to talk about, you know, we can go from here we are.
It's just a thing. All right. So what are your tips for people who struggle to meditate regularly? You can reframe that question if you want to.
I think that, I didn't think I would say this, but I think maybe we're all meditating sometimes.
Oh, that's nice.
You know, instead of feeling that it's this big entity, because I was thinking even my little brothers, I tell you, they meditate when they mow the lawn. I know it. That's why they love it so much.
Oh, that noise is like a drone. It's like the tambura or something.
It is. It's like really meditative. I don't know why I'm just talking about them now, but, you know, like when you're fishing, like I feel like we draw towards our experiences. Maybe some people, you go and hike, and it, like you just said, that was sound. That was interesting, around the rhythm of your foot on the gravel. You know, it has a certain sound. Like when I went hiking in Nepal, it's interesting because there was like an impact to the repetitiveness of the experience. And so I wouldn't have said I was meditating there, but I was meditating there, you know? So I think maybe it's more, like maybe just look, where am I already doing it? That'd be an interesting question.
That's beautiful.
You know, I didn't really think I was going to say that, but my daughter, when we go, you know, like little walk, but butterfly track, sometimes she stops me and she's like, how many sounds do you hear? And this is so cool because we have done that before. And her wanting to do it is because the experience was so satisfying, you know?
Oh, amazing.
so that's what I noticed, that I was like, oh, she's actually thinks that's fun and that's a game to play because it felt so good when we used to do it. And even on a class trip, we went out in nature and the teacher did that. And I thought, oh, I'm loving you as a teacher. You know, it's like just those little moments. So perhaps that's a cool question. Where am I already meditating in my life? Where, and it'd be interesting if you've never done it before, how you would even figure that out. But maybe it's like, where do I feel really good? And like, I'm exactly, I don't want to say where I'm meant to be, but there's a really funny book that says, wherever you go, there you are.
Yeah, I love that. Mm-hmm.
So maybe it's that. Where do I feel that? Like I'm fully there. And I feel that that's just gentler, you know what I mean? Rather than, it's like if I said to someone, do you want to be a professional beach volleyball player? There's like, you know how many hurdles there are for that?
Mm-hmm.
You know, it's like so intimidating. However, it's like, well, where do you already, this is the weirdest example, but where do I already feel like I walk in the sand? You know, where do I feel that little unbalanced feeling of, or uncertain surface, for example? It's like, it just doesn't feel as intimidating if you know you've already walked that.
I just loved what you just did there. I'm not entirely sure what it was.
Me neither. I've never said that before, but it was like,
that's what happens when you combine forces. And this is something that is one of the reasons I'm doing these conversations, is just the surprise and wow factor. And meditation is designed to be done not only individually, but as a collective. And I think that's also where people hurt themselves, where they say, I can't keep it up. But then we look at, you know, maybe people around them who don't want them to keep it up. Because, you know, once you start flowering, for some people, that's making them really uncomfortable. And sometimes we just, there's a little bit too much almost self-reflection. So, yeah, well, we got through a lot, didn't we, with just 4 questions?
Well, I do want to say one thing to you in particular. I feel that you're in my life to debunk something inside of me. And the wording I'm going to use is, I always feel that I've been a predictor, but without being able to explain it, I then, you know, more and more as I engage in what other people do, but you in particular, kind of like debunk a lot of myths for me around the work that you do. So even in this conversation, I was thinking, yeah, I do seem, it's not a step ahead. That's not it. It's like, there's just clarity and assuredness sometimes. And it often occurs when I'm talking with other people. So yeah, thank you for being that in my life. Like, you really are positioned there to remove the story that I currently have so that I can just keep stepping into it. So thanks.
Oh, you're just lovely. This is why we were meant to meet. That's so beautiful. If I could compare that to something, it's a story I've told before, but there was this festival at the beach near us, and they created a tree, and it was full of fairy doors into the tree. And my son Forrest, I mean, his name is Forrest, like, wow, how more hippie can you get? He sticks his hand into the door to try to find the fairy, because he just assumes you see a door in a tree, there's a fairy. This is real stuff. And then this boy came up to him and said, what are you doing? There's no such thing as fairies. But he was very aggressive. Like, what a stupid thing to be doing. And I felt this smack in my body, this horror, that like that moment that it's like the childhood is ruptured. Like, you know, almost like his faith in me, his faith in this like kind world. And I stepped in, and this is something I was kind of proud of. It was a bit strange at the time. I stepped in front of this boy and I said, fairies do exist.
Good on you.
And Forrest is like, yeah, fairies do exist. And then this boy's family came up, and I just kind of walked off because I didn't want to have that in front of his family. But I could see as soon as I saw his family, they didn't believe in fairies. It was like 100% obvious to me that boy never had a chance. And so it reminded me those tiny little moments when children reach out their psychic antennae, and you have that opportunity to help them to grow. And it's so tempting in a way to spiritually mutilate them. And it's to be present is to have a choice in that moment. And it's the difference between, you know, an adult growing up with their wings intact versus someone who has to go buy them at Kmart because they don't think that they have wing sockets to begin with. Now,
Yeah.
I must tell you something.
Who's coming? Forrest and the fairy.
Yeah,
come on, Forrest.
Just for 1 minute, I'm doing an interview.
And look at this backdrop,
Give me
everyone.
1 minute, little fairy.
So perfect.
So, this is Forrest.
Okay.
Forrest, do you remember when we saw the door in the tree and you put your hand in to find the fairy?
Yep.
And do you remember the boy said there's no fairies?
What?
Remember there was that boy and he said there's no fairies.
Wow.
And he was angry. And my mummy said there are fairies. Just because, you know what I said to that boy? Just because you can't see them doesn't mean they're not there.
Yeah, I want to ask Forrest, am I allowed to ask you a question? Because we went to the Frozen show yesterday with my. Have you seen it? Have you seen Frozen?
We do sing those songs all the time.
He knows it.
We love all those things.
So my daughter has money in her hand and she says, Mom, if I drop this anywhere and I make a wish, will it come true? Or do I have to drop it in like the wishing well?
Oh my God, Forrest, what did we see today at the fountain?
Yeah, what did you see?
In the fountain that people had thrown in there.
Money!
Yes.
I went to a fountain today at the hospital. I looked in the water and I didn't see it. My husband saw it. People have thrown so much money in there probably because it's a hospital fountain. It's if you go there. But I just couldn't understand it. I'm like, why would you throw money away? And he said, oh, it's obviously, you know, a Western thing. And I said,
oh, you don't know about this?
Well, I've seen it. I've always thought it's a bit strange.
Where's the pen?
Oh, I can see we'll have to start ending this interview because Forrest is just like, we have other things to do here, human adult. But sorry, you were saying, so Jordan,
the wishing well is a thing that she knows. So when we were in Europe, there's lots of like fountains. So there's a lot of it. So she was in Europe for a year. So her friend says to her, do you know that they just come and they gather up all that money? It's not real. Oh yeah, exactly.
It's like when you tell them Santa Claus is a fat guy, like they've just hired off the, And
it was fascinating. And I said, like you, I went right in there and I said, who says that your wish doesn't come true? And she said, if you wish for unicorns, then that can't come true. So that like, we're having this like debate. And I said, well, it's funny you say that because, and Jordan said, she's like, that's what I was going to wish for, a unicorn. And so, and then I said, you know, it's funny. Jordan's been to a birthday party with a unicorn. And the girl's like, what? And I said, well, actually it was a horse and they dressed it up and they put this on it. And I said, the thing is, it's all what you can imagine. So it's all what your imagination can do. And I said, you can decide to fly the unicorn if you want, or you can decide to just ride the horse, you know? And so we had this like big discussion about wishes and imagination. And I mean, I really feel that that's something that I struggled with growing up as well. So my daughter is like my own coming home.
I'm going to see if I can just gently divert Forrest out of this.
No problem. He's like, no thanks.
And I will help you in 5 minutes.
Okay.
I will be back. Well, I think what we demonstrated there.
You should have seen Forrest's face when you're like, I'm going to divert. He's like, no.
Is that that's what it's like to live with psychic children, where as soon as you say their name, they are summoned. And I've had it happen ever since he was pre-conception. In fact, he would just turn up. And even when he was born, I still remember I was so excited after he was born to finally go into my meditation, into my pyramid in my head where I would just rest with my spirit guide. And newborn Forrest turned up and I banished him. I said, no, this is not going to happen. I know what you're doing. You're a time traveler. I am too. That's why we've been matched together, because I'm bigger than you. So
wow.
I picked out my little tiny being spirit and I said, I will see you soon when you wake up, but just for now I'm going to just be in my pyramid. Bye. Go find
look, and he's coming in again. There you go.
Well, look, he's got strong energy, as do all my children, and this is the fun part of having telepathic parenting experiences. But if we just go back one step,
Yeah.
it's clear that we were meant to talk today because I have been at the hospital all day getting a few things checked out. And like I said, we had this experience with the fountain where I couldn't see the money in it. I just really enjoyed the breeze. And for me, I'm very, sensory. And my husband is like, look at all that money.
It's really interesting, isn't it? Like, I actually didn't really realize that perhaps certain people don't even know that tradition, which even makes it more fascinating, this whole idea that you build into it. Like when my daughter explained to her friend that she has 3 eyes, wow. Oh yeah, to her engineering parents, like, and the girl's 2 years older, and she's like, no, you don't. And my daughter is just like plain as day. Yes, you have a 3rd eye right here. And I thought, this is just awesome. And that other girl was like, no, saying it to me. I said, oh yeah, ask your mom.
This is so good.
So we have this joke.
So much fun. What I love about this conversation is it's just so full of hope. And that's kind of the thing I have gotten so much from my meditation practice with many different teachers over the years. It's just that hope that there is more to us than a body, and there is more to us than what we see in the mirror, and that we have help available essentially. And a lot of people, they just desire that to be proven. Am I really a soul? And I feel like we have these moments in meditation. Even the first time I meditated, I had that glimpse into that bigger self, and it was this deep sense of comfort. And so it's true, it doesn't really matter what technique you use to access the comfort. Hopefully it's legal and doesn't hurt other people. Right? But we're all so differently structured. It makes sense that some people need to chant, other people need something like really rough physical activity, and that's okay. I mean, it would be incredibly boring if we were all monks on a mountain. Maybe that's actually the problem, is that's how they market a lot of meditation, is that's essentially the goal, which is not entirely achievable when you have 3 children under 6.
Well, way to bring, let's do that. Let's bring the mum into focus to end this, because I feel that sometimes it's like a setup for failure. And Eckhart Tolle, who wrote The Power of Now, a caller phoned in, and she was really grappling with this exercise about being present. He said the best thing, because she was like, how can I get to your session, and how can I get your book? And he's like, do not get these things. He said, your entire experience right now is your spiritual experience. So I would say, as a mom, your entire experience as a mom is the meditation. Like, there's so many opportunities to practice breathing. We even say, we joke about it.
This has got to be a whole nother thing that we create together at some point. This has totally got legs.
Don't you think?
Like,
because it's
like make me happen.
And I think that's the example with where you're already doing it, because we make ourselves wrong, and then we're distanced from the opportunity. Like for me, COVID was this amazing, I've never been able to practice observation the way I got an opportunity to, like in this, seeing people be so divergent in their beliefs. I got to watch anger, frustration, the way we act. I felt like I was doing a PhD or something, being able to observe all this. So as a mom, I mean, there's nothing that triggers me and brings me back to my breath like mothering. So if, and then add having a business. So this is another thing. It's like, oh my gosh, let me just notice how this child won't sleep and how anxious I'm getting right now. And the more I want you to sleep, I used to notice, oh my gosh, okay, hold on. I know we're going long, but I have to tell you this.
It's all 100% related, because I was just reflecting on how Forrest came in and went out, and how in the past I would not have been able to continue the interview. I would have been so embarrassed and humiliated that I hadn't controlled the situation by basically bribing him into submission. And part of my, I've got mentors in meditation and self-care, and they've said, just notice how quickly you're able to come back to the now, which of course is an anagram of one or own, you know, to be totally in it and to be like seeing the success in what you're achieving. And I noticed it was just very, very gentle. And this is the only time in my life I've been like this, and that makes me feel happy.
But like better than any kind of sit, you know, oh, let me organize a sit where we're going to breathe for an hour. I'm like, what you just did with Forrest, that opportunity was more transformative, I would say, than probably that sit. Now, yes, having like the background of the breath without all the distraction kind of helps you with that moment that you just had. But in a way, if you don't have that background, it's like, as much as you can, it's like feeling your breath go in and out of your nose while you're in real life situations. So with this is so wild because you have younger kids now, like younger than mine. So it's not happening as much these days, but I would notice if I had like a business call and I'm trying to get my daughter to sleep and I could feel the breathing. Like I didn't even know I was doing this at first. And all of a sudden I would be like, I'm not breathing. I'm holding my breath. And the minute I would become aware of my breath and just start doing the in the nose, out the nose. By the way, that's all Vipassana is for 10 hours a day for 10 days. Okay. So I just solved your Vipassana. So basically in through the nose, my breath would deepen. And then I would hear my daughter's breath. And I'm like, there's a lot to do. There's a lot about this, about psychic, how you start to like match each other. Her breath would deepen and she was asleep, but I literally had to give up the call. Like it was my attachment, you know? And so it's like, it's a massive opportunity to work on attachment because I'm like, give up the call. Just you know what? Life is going to go on if this call doesn't happen. So I'm like having this like internal stuff going on for me. And then when I release the call, ironically, in comes the call. You can't trick it. I've tried, you know, you try to be tricky with attachment. Like, I don't really care about the call, but I do care. I know that if I say this, like I've tried those tricks. They kind of don't work. You really have to legitimately let it go. And when you do, really magical things happen, including your child's breathing starts to change. So to me, if you're the mom, you're the lucky one because all the ones, I don't want to say this to people that don't have the kids, but it's more to just draw in and uplift moms to say, you've got the best ever vehicle to work with. And it's your kids. And for me anyways, I believe they're closer to source. So you also get little gurus in your house teaching. So to me, it's just like best ever. So good.
You know, it's definitely change of scene having children around. I mean, they're literally closer to the ground. They can see up your nose and all the boogers that you're hiding mentally, spiritually, physically.
And they'll tell you.
Yes, they sure do. One thing we do quite regularly, we did it yesterday, is we give the children a camera, so just their phone camera, and I just let them loose and they take photos and I'll sit back and then look at it. And it gives me a really, literally like this kind of view of what they experienced their childhood as. And it's quite profound. The things that my children took photos of yesterday, like I would never have thought to take those photos because in my mind I would have censored them or judged them. But they took a lot of photos of the baby and of me and of all those just small beautiful things in our house, like the light in the windows. And to me, I would never do that because I would think that's a waste of a photo. I mean, I grew up when you had to pay a lot of money to develop a photo. So every photo you would take had to just be like this perfect portrait where everyone's eyes were open by force if necessary.
Yeah.
My children don't have that lack mentality. And so I looked at it and I went, I actually prefer looking at their photos than mine because they are alive and they are invigorating. So yeah, that's obviously something to do.
I'm going to do this with my daughter.
A type of meditation for me was actually gazing at these photos my children had produced, and they're only 4 and 6. But actually, the 1-year-old took his first selfie the other day. He reached over and just took a selfie. And there's no reason they can't. They have all the mechanics to do these things. But I guess, if we start winding this back,
Okay.
I do think it's true. There is this idea that when you have children, life is harder. But one could also argue life is harder. It has more heart in it.
Oh, that was good.
But also heart is an anagram of
Harder.
earth. It's more earth. You literally have to get down on the ground to pick up all the shit that they drop.
It's true.
And there's
Was that a bag?
there's this realization that everything is just about cleaning up, which of course, we've both experienced in different courses we've learned. And that wonderful sense of humor comes back. I did a comedy show. I'd love to do comedy when I'm pregnant, so I'll have to find another inspiration now. Otherwise, I'll never get back on stage. But my last one, I talked about spoons and how we have no more spoons in our house because I can no longer be bothered to pick them up. And once they're on the ground, it's just a free-for-all with the children of, spoon bending or just wild things that happen to those spoons. They're gone. Bye-bye. See you later. They're all extinct. We have one spoon in the house. We have to just keep washing it.
Okay, that is so funny.
And yeah, and literally I got to the point where I understood the joy of children as nothing is where you thought it was.
Yeah.
When you live by yourself, and this would be the case, for a lot of people with or without children, but you have this illusion that you are very important and that you can change a lot of things and have them stay the same because you said so. And I just love this randomness that happens when you have partners, animals, children, but even when you start to have more spiritual connection, you have the fairies and pixies moving your car keys, the little bastards. And you suddenly remember that this is why you chose Earth. You chose Earth because it would be a cooperative venture.
Yeah, exactly. Like you didn't, that's right. It seems like
the only place you can have a heart. It's the only place in the galaxy you can have a human heart. That's what I've been told by a lot of my teachers, because you always have that moment in your spiritual journey where you're like, why did I choose a body? It's so annoying having to feed it, look after it, and brush its teeth all the time. And they'll go, it's the only place you could have a human.
Wow. I never thought of that. That's great.
Really stuck for me because it's actually, for me, I feel like that is totally, absolutely true. It's the only place in the galaxy you can come, you can have this level of feeling.
Brilliant. And I think that's where the conversation is headed, about the heart. Tell me that quote you just said again about, harder or hearter.
Oh, that was just me making a mum joke.
No, I'm going to skip that. That's good. I like that.
Once you're a mother, everything is harder. But you could also say everything is harder. Because essentially, your insides become your outsides. There's that incredible sense of just everything is raw. But I have to admit, I've also always been quite careful the way I celebrate motherhood. I've often felt not able to talk about it because I feel for the people who maybe haven't been able to have children or don't want children. But then at the same time, I remember all the times in my life I wanted to give up on my dream of getting married and having a family. And it was those people who totally believed in their choices who pulled me through that dark place. It was the mums who had 4 kids or have had lots of relationships and just talking to them about their war wounds. And I went, I want to be like you.
But I also, in this conversation, especially around meditation, I would say the conversation is not really being dominated by moms, not even close. It's like, I just was listening to a podcast with the guy who is the voice or the creator of the Calm app, ironically. And, that's actually where I feel the conversation often is at the moment, is a lot of men and a lot of young guys, actually. So not just...
I have to admit, on social media, I've also noticed, why can't you just shut it all out? Probably because I'm not wired to do so. And even at a cultural level, I've been raised in a community where we're inherently really psychic, telepathic, and in each other's business. In Asia, I think of even Japan, my husband's part Japanese, they have these paper-thin walls. So you need a different style. You need to be able to adapt, to people's different backgrounds. Anyway, look, that's obviously one of the other reasons we met Sarah, is to somehow introduce this whole new level of crazy cool into this conversation. And look, I want to just say thank you for spending a lot of time with me today.
Yes, we went way over. I hope that's okay with you.
What does that even mean?
Exactly. I know you in time. Who are we kidding?
I would just be changing nappies. Not that there's anything wrong with that, but this was really fun. I wanted to mention in numerology, every word has a vibration. And if you just give me one sec, hang on, I'm calculating something.
Okay.
So
this is her computer mind,
imagination has a 44-8 vibration. It's actually 448 over here now. And that's the same vibration as happiness. So perhaps if we looked at meditation as a tool for preserving and enhancing our imagination, it also becomes like easier and more accessible, because we know at a time like this, when basically the towers are falling down, it's those people who still have their wild imagination and who are the weird ones who will actually probably be the leaders from now on, actually, because things have been so toppled. It's the ones who have always had to make do with less who will turn the tables. I've been saying this for years, that the voiceless are the ones who will be taking the stage from now on.
Wow, that's
they have just been biding their time, noticing and noticing. This is what I would do if I had that amount of money or time or influence, and here we are. And a lot of the, I guess, the big cats are extincting themselves right now, the dinosaurs. And here we are. Maybe we just look like little spring chickens, but I think we'll find, this is the year that sensitive is the new leadership.
Yeah, I feel that.
I believe in.
My daughter is so imaginative that she's helping me remember, and she's still like, I kept thinking, she's 6, like maybe it'll go, but I just still see it being so strong and awesome. And even her lack of words sometimes, I know that again is like the teacher. I never really valued the observer as much as I do watching one go through life, because I can be very forward and dominant in that way, and I'm like, oh wow, there's you
were a volleyball. you were trained to go for it.
Yeah, but it's amazing how it just never really occurred to me to think about the world of the quieter one and the value of it. So yeah, I have to say that I feel that I'm on that train that you've just spoken about, really understanding the value of the
very much a Harry Potter train. So I'm very glad that you're coming to Hogwarts with us, and not, modified Hogwarts with added cultural and existential tolerance. But yeah, if we start winding up, look, so we know that actually your daughter is a number 1, and one of a kind, the disruptor, and she's got that early blooming life path that at age 10, she's just like, here, this is what I'm doing. So she's actually really, really close to sort of a really, like, lots of breakthroughs. And it doesn't get much earlier than 10. There's a few children I've seen where they're sort of 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, but Ziggy's one of them. I have to say, like, expect the unexpected with Jordan, because, for example, I'm a 29-11. At 29, I got into numerology. You're a 31-4. At 31, you got married, and there's lots of other achievements. Jordan's 3 times faster than all of us. So she's literally just plowing through.
It's going to happen at 10, what I did at 31.
The level of consciousness?
Yeah.
Yes, why not? Isn't that the whole idea of...
Wow.
Isn't that the whole basic idea of choosing a parent as someone who will accelerate you? I think this is where we've been sold a bit of a lie, that our parents' job is to keep us happy in our comfort zone. I mean, yes, when you're in the womb, but even then there's this incredible urging and pulsating in the body of hurry up and grow a few, 100,000 more cells.
Wow.
So, yeah.
That's cool. I never thought about that, the accelerating you.
Well,
because
I
definitely
noticed Jordan. Wow. I mean, she's got such a powerful name. The River Jordan always comes to mind for me. And, a river unites, and a river must be respected. It goes where it wants, really.
God, get out of the way, parents. That's really amazing to hear that distinction. And even my feeling when I was holding Z was really different.
He's
I
very similar to Jordan.
Mhm.
And I mentioned to you off the call that he can turn my calls on and off. He'll pull tarot cards. He reaches for the pen as if to describe things. And if I wasn't trained in these tiny observations that make up part of being a psychic, I know that I would crack down on that and I would say, naughty boy, don't do that. You know, don't interrupt mummy while I try to teach you things you learned 3 lifetimes ago.
Good
And
reminder.
it's so much more fun when you don't interfere because you have so much less to do and you just have that opportunity, like, for the humor, for the pleasure. And I think most of all is it's just, I think the meaning of life is to be able to go your own way without constantly having to fix others.
I feel called to say this for anyone listening, and to forgive thyself when you totally get that wrong, because as that's what I just said to myself. It's okay, Sarah, even though you've started, as you were describing that, because I think sometimes it can come across, when I'm sharing something like that, my awesomeness, which is there 90% of the time, but 10% of the time when I crack down and I have a later reflection, which is what I've been learning with Jordy actually, is reclaiming the sorry. Like I never heard my mom say I'm sorry. And this isn't against my mom. It's the survivor in her didn't know how empowering that was going to be. And so for me, saying sorry to my daughter is just like the biggest thing for me, and something transformative happened. So I just felt called to say, if you feel like you flubbed it sometimes, moms, one of the greatest gifts, we always, like, this biggest thing going on at schools at the moment is like, you can make mistakes. It's okay. You're not perfect. And then all these kids are like super perfectionistic. And yet, and then we all tell them all the time, all these lessons, but then I won't say I'm not willing to say I'm sorry. I'm not willing to fail. I'm not willing to do that mistake. I'm trying to hide it. I'm trying to not do it.
That paralleling is very generations deep. And it may continue for quite some time to come. But what I love is that you're so aware of it. And I mean, there's a lot of jokes I could make. Let me see if I can pare it down in the interest of time. And Ziggy's also vibing me. I mean, so if I just go back a couple of things we've talked about, I do a lot of word magic. It's something I want to do more of. Even the words around what we do. Mummy, a corpse wrapped in bandages, like, who won the prize for that? Who got like that golden handshake? What is that about? Mother, when you look at mother, the M is like a bird beak, and other, like feeding the other. So that's not to denigrate the words. Look, the words are very beautiful, but there is a flip side to them. And essentially, when there is a word, it has a field around it of everyone who's ever said it. And this is actually why I'll sing certain songs like, I don't know, Imagine and things, because when I sing it, I can feel essentially the energy of all the people who've sung it. And, for the most part, a lot of those people have positive intentions. But there's something to be said for using different words to explain what we do. And in fact, just using our name is really lovely. That's not a disrespectful thing. In fact, we choose our names as souls to give us a certain vibration and destiny. Right? Even if it's a nickname, I really encourage people to do that, because in the end, you're calling your child by their name.
So meaning calling ourselves by our names?
Oh, yeah.
My daughter calls us our names, which is ironic.
Everybody,
a lot of people talk about that.
Your daughter's been on the call the whole time. I feel like she's literally doing party line over here, as is my lovely little Ziggy. And you'll probably find over the next few weeks, she might even just recite some of the things we talked about or bring it up.
Wow.
Because, it's clear she's so incredibly connected. And that is a compliment to you and Nat. It really is, because it's just like if you do have a baby, you don't just put it in someone's arms who's going to drop them. When you see those special little pixies come through, I have to remind myself of this a lot. It's this compliment from the universe saying, we reckon you could do this. Or you would at least be the less bad person to look after this one. The least terrible. I'm like, I can do least terrible. Thank you very much. Yes,
rise to that.
I'm going to be the least terrible. So for practice, I wanted to recommend as we wind up something, again, I've learned over time. We often look at our children with so much love, but it's actually really powerful to also switch and imagine what it'd be like for our child to be looking at us with that much love, or even to turn that amount of love back on ourselves through mirror work. And I found that to be very grounding. Otherwise, I think for our children, it is literally like sitting under a spotlight. There's actually a lot of pressure to stay the same. So yeah, gazing at yourself as lovingly as you gaze at your child, and even accepting the loving gaze of your child is one of the little meditations I do to keep my energy high. Otherwise, I do tend to feel a bit drained at the end of the day.
Awesome. That's deep. I got to think about that some more, because that's amazing, because it's a real guide for loving yourself. Whereas my kind of beef around the love yourself message is like, but how? I'm such a mechanist, right? But you just gave some mechanism, like a actual how-to guide.
Well, the last thing I'll have to say, because Ziggy's literally like,
I know. Sorry, Ziggy. I can't stop. I'll
stop. It's okay. We'll have to do another call. No, it's just gone out of my brain. I think I've mentioned on a number of my calls that when Ziggy is ready to go, the internet will drop out. It's happened so many times, and my clients think that I'm pulling their legs, but it's real. Like, this stuff is all real. And, I don't think I've quite accepted it. I still have this lovely illusion that I'm in control. But, I remember now. The last thing I wanted to say. I hear a lot of people say my children are my greatest teachers. And it actually makes me want to vomit. As I know that's kind of rude to say. But we are our greatest teachers. And if we're not being our greatest teachers, I just think it's a little bit brutal to put that on our children.
Yeah, it's a lot of pressure.
I mean, honestly, my Ziggy is 1. I'm 40. I'm not 40 times smarter, but I have been 40 times longer, and I do know a few more things about the current state of civilization. So I try to remind myself that I'm actually my greatest teacher, and that he is his greatest teacher, and that he has a whole bunch of spirit guides who will look after him, whether I'm here or not. That's not to say that I abdicate from my duty. I have lots of responsibilities to him. But it's very comforting for me to visualize him with this kind of football team behind him at any point in time. Because, otherwise I just constantly drain my energy trying to provide what I could never provide.
That's deep.
Well,
that's good.
Hey, you're good at getting stuff out of the hard.
The Sarah duo.
Bedrock.
It's still there. We did a course together, and it came alive together. It did.
Yes, I feel that there's more conversations to come. So anyway, for those of you who are still watching,
okay, bye, Ziggy.
You're fantastic, and we hope that you've enjoyed this progressive rock version of an interview. And I'm sure you have, because if you're still watching now, you totally get it. So this has been an absolute pleasure to talk to Sarah Maxwell, a retired professional athlete turned supercoach. With her beautiful daughter Jordan's spirit hanging out over here on my shoulder. I feel like she's literally just been like, hey. And then my little Ziggy's sitting on Sarah's shoulder like the world's sort of smallest Asian looking koala.
God, he's cute.
I look forward to more conversations with you. If you would like to follow Sarah's work, how can people do that? I'll also put links at the bottom. What's the best way they can follow you or connect with you?
Good question. I think my website, inthegamecoaching.com, could be a good way to source everything. I'm actually starting a new Instagram account because I have been fighting with Instagram in my heart. So the Awakened Mama with underscores in between could also be a good one.
Okay, great.
Yeah, so it's brand new. Yeah, so we'll see. But inthegamecoaching.com, much more solid.
Awesome. Well, thanks so much. So I'll get that all together. And thanks, everyone. This has been Sarah from Sarah.com, Facebook, The Numbers Queen, and Instagram, Sarah1111, with another fabulous Sarah Maxwell. And thank you so much for your support. 1111 double peace signs always. See you next time. Bye.